from speech number 8, and the title of her speech is "Don't Be a Victim to IRS Telephone Scam." So now that it's tax season, we all want to hear about that, so listen carefully. Jacqueline?
Before I begin, I'd like to pass some of these out so that it will guide our discussion, or at least inform this meeting. So, as Brenda just alluded to, even though this is the beginning of the year, one of the very first things that we always have to think about in the first half of the year is filing our taxes. And as many of you know, if you've already experienced or gone through the process, April 15th is the national filing deadline for filing your individual income tax statements, or what's otherwise known as your 1040s. And one of the things that you should have noticed, or if you have not already begun to receive these forms, you'll receive a number of tax and income statements, such as your W-2s, your 1099s, maybe even your 1098s that have to do with your mortgage interest deductions on your home. But there's another thing that many government officials have also observed, as well as people who follow financial scams, and that is that there's an uptick around the time shortly before and after the filing deadline of April the 15th. And that is because there are a number of highly sophisticated financial scammers who utilize the telephone system, the email, and other means of communication to exploit people's fear in order to gain control of either their financial, personal, or medical identity. If they do so, and if they're successful, that can be highly devastating for the individual. And in order to undo those effects, that can take years and be a very expensive process. So I want to cover just one type of scam that you may notice or may begin to have received. I don't know if any of you have already received what's called as an IRS phone scam, but these individuals will begin to perpetrate or represent themselves as IRS agents. Specifically, they'll make unsolicited phone calls, typically in the evening, between the hours of 5 and 9 p.m. Another thing that they will do is that they will leave urgent callback requests stating, some type of message, given their authorization ID, as well as their name, and that they're a representative of the IRS, and that you owe some sort of delinquent tax debt and you need to call them back. Another thing that they have noticed fairly recently is that they have started using online communications such as text messages, as well as phishing emails to send people notices that they have delinquent tax debts. If you actually intercept one of these calls, that individual not only will perpetrate or will sound very legitimate because they will give their name and they'll give what's called an authorization code, usually 16 digits, but they'll tell you that you owe some sort of delinquent tax debt. Now, many of you, as myself, we're all very busy people. We're paying bills all the time. I'll be honest with you, I don't know sometimes if I pay a bill or not. And I'm sure we've all found ourselves in that similar situation. We've hoped we paid, we've hoped we filed. Oh, maybe it was a couple years ago. But they will try to exploit that ambiguity or that uncertainty, and they will tell you you owe a specific amount, and you're not really able to confirm it. And they will also use, in some cases, to ratchet up the anxiety, they will use certain invective words. They will threaten you, they will be extremely abusive, and they will tell you such things as, if you don't pay within a certain period of time, 48 hours, your license will be revoked, or someone's going to come and arrest you, or someone will stop by your house and they will seize your assets, like your vehicle, or some other type of personal property. Another thing that makes these types of calls very suspicious is usually when you see on your caller ID, you're able to identify, typically, if it's some type of telemarketer. If it's a telemarketer, you can see some sort of 1-800 number or something, or even if it's one of your friends or an organization, it will appear. It will say the Red Cross or something. But these numbers, with these caller ID scams, because they sometimes are calling in the US, and sometimes they're calling outside of the US. Their purpose is to evade authorities. So they will use, you will sometimes see unrestricted numbers or restricted numbers, and you'll wonder, well, what is that? Oh, restricted. That seems very official. Sounds like the FBI or some other organization, must be serious. And that's another technique that they use, all to create the illusion and the aura of authority and of imminent responsibility. But I'm here to tell you, there are a lot of things that the IRS will do, but there are certain things the IRS will never do. First of all, the IRS, as I have on this paper, will never, ever, ever call you. Never, ever. That is because they do not have the manpower. Even if they wanted to, they don't have time to track you down for your $500 tax debt or even your $50,000 tax debt. If they do reach out to you, they will contact you through what's called a notice of deficiency, and they will provide you with the information of the amount of debt you actually owe and the means to which you can communicate. They will never demand that you make an immediate payment. They will give you opportunities and ways to call so that you can set up some sort of payment plan, and you can handle it that way. Also, if you're not sure whether or not you have a tax debt, and this is just in general, or if you believe, not really sure that it's valid, the IRS will always allow you the opportunity to dispute or possibly appeal that tax debt. There's always a means and a method that you can communicate to the IRS, either by yourself or with the assistance of some sort of enrolled agent, CPA, or tax attorney, so that you can dispute the debt that you think you might owe. The IRS will never ask you for your financial information. They will never ask you for your credit cards or your debit cards. And finally, they will never do what many people think that they, or in their minds, appear to do, and that is bring the police or other agencies to arrest you and seize your assets. So what happens if you get one of these calls? First of all, do not give out any financial or personal information. And by that, I mean, don't even confirm your name. If they even state, is this your address? Don't confirm that and hang up immediately. However, if you want to help the authorities, what you can do, and you decide to engage these individuals, you can ask them for their name, ask them for their authorization code, and get a callback number. That is very valuable because the last two numbers on this sheet of paper you can call what's called the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration or the Federal Trade Communication. They both have websites as well as hotlines so that you can report these individuals so that they can at least try to minimize the spread of these types of scams. Unfortunately, these scams have been highly effective because they have played on many people's fears. They have sought to exploit a number of people's anxiety, and it has been highly effective, but I want all of you to know that there are means that you can take to address that or at least protect yourself. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. If you suspect that you've received a suspicious call and you're not really sure whether or not it is a bona fide IRS agent, certainly come to me and ask me. Thank you very much.